When you look at a landscape like this, it's pretty clear how it could shape a civilization. But what's really wild is that this world of rock and sea didn't just shape one civilization, it split it in two. We're about to dig into how this place created one of the greatest rivalries in all of history.
So, how does a place like this end up creating a civilization that literally changes the course of human history? Well, the answer isn't some famous king or a single glorious battle. Nope, it's right there in the very ground the ancient Greeks walked on. We're going to see how the unique challenges of their homeland forced them down a path of some pretty incredible innovation.
To really get ancient Greece, you can't start with the people. You've got to start with the land itself and what a land it was. Think of it as both a prison and a gateway. It's a place that physically pushed communities apart, but at the very same time, it connected them to the entire wider world.
Okay, just look at these facts. 80% of the country is covered in mountains. These aren't just hills, we're talking about massive natural walls that chopped the land up into these tiny, isolated pockets. So right away, trying to build one big, unified kingdom? Almost impossible. And good luck finding enough flat land for large-scale farming. But, and this is the real kicker, that enormous coastline and all those islands, that was their highway. It forced the Greeks to look to the water, to become masters of the sea, and to figure out a truly brilliant way to adapt to their isolation.
So because they were so cut off from each other, the Greeks did something totally different from, say, the Egyptians or the Persians. They didn't build one massive unified empire. Instead, they came up with something completely new, something revolutionary, a political system that was perfectly tailor-made for their fragmented world.
And what they invented was the polis. You probably know it as the city-state. Now, it's really important to get this. A polis was so much more than just a city. You should think of it as its own independent country. I mean, some of them only had a few thousand people, but each one had its own government, its own army, its own laws, and its own unique identity, a complete little world unto itself.
And every single one of these polis was designed to be a self-sufficient universe. You had the Acropolis, the high ground for your temples and for defense. Then you had the Agora, the open marketplace, which was the heart of public and commercial life. Surrounding it all was the farmland that fed everybody. And, most importantly, you had the citizens, the body of people who believed they were the ultimate authority.
So this model just exploded. You end up with hundreds of these different city-states, each one its own unique experiment in how to run a society. But out of all of them, two would rise to the top. And they could not have been more different. They came to represent the absolute polar opposites of the Greek world, becoming bitter rivals in what was really a battle of ideas.
First up, let's head to Athens and see how they answered the challenge of the polis. Because they were located right near the sea, their geography really encouraged them to choose a path of openness, of trade, and of radical innovation.
Athens basically bet its entire future on the power of the individual. Their big idea was that if you empower citizens through something like democracy and you encourage intellectual curiosity, art, philosophy, debate, you will become the strongest city in Greece. Their wealth came pouring in from their vast trading network, all of which was protected by their incredibly powerful navy.
Okay, now let's journey away from the coast, deep inland, to a city that took a radically different path. Sparta was landlocked and surrounded by potential enemies. Their solution wasn't openness and innovation. It was absolute, iron-willed discipline and control.
This single number, this is the key to understanding absolutely everything about Sparta. 7-1. For every one Spartan citizen, there were roughly 7 enslaved people called helots. The Spartans were a tiny military elite living on top of a massive oppressed population. This created a constant, deep-seated fear of revolt that shaped every single aspect of their society.
Because of that fear, Sparta sacrificed everything else. Art, philosophy, personal freedom. They threw it all away for one single goal: the security and stability of the state. Their government was an oligarchy, ruled by a select few. And every citizen, man or woman, was essentially a cog in a great military machine designed for one purpose: to maintain control. So, what we're left with are these two titans. Two profound and profoundly opposing answers to that fundamental question of how you build the perfect society. One was built on a foundation of freedom, the other on a foundation of fear.
And this really gets to the core of their philosophical conflict. Was the purpose of society to empower the individual to reach their full potential, like the Athenians believed? Or was it to subordinate the individual for the greater security of the collective, as the Spartans practiced? It really was mind versus might. When you break it down like this, you can just see how deep these differences ran, from who held power, all the way down to what kids were taught in school. And here's a fascinating detail that might surprise you. Spartan women actually had way more freedom and a higher status than their Athenian counterparts. Why? Well, it was purely practical. The state needed them to be strong mothers of future warriors.
You know, it's easy to think this rivalry is just ancient history, something that ended thousands of years ago. But it's not. This conflict laid the foundation for political questions that we are still arguing about to this very day. Seriously, every single time we debate the balance between individual liberties and national security, we are walking in the footsteps of Athens and Sparta.
So this leaves us with one final big question. Which of these visions has truly had the more lasting impact on our world? Is it the innovative, sometimes chaotic, but brilliant society of thinkers, or is it the stable, disciplined, and powerful state of warriors? The answer you might find is not nearly as clear-cut as it seems.